The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Game Toppers, untimely Spiel to Shar discussions, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board card and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review King's Dilemma from Horrible Guild. Then they take a look back at their reviews of Maquis and Stellar in their Dukes Quadruple-Take. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean identifying himself.
You got some kudos on the guild for that. Also, by the way, this is Alex.
And you're joining us for episode 251, which we're calling Between a Rock and a Hard Place, thanks to King Splendor over on our Board Game Geek Guild. That is a great episode title that encapsulates everything we're talking about. That expression being, kind of a hard decision to make, which you have plenty of those in A King's Dilemma. The rock is kind of referencing asteroids from Stellar or Stellar, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And then the hard place is what the French resistance were in during Nazi occupation, which sounds about right.
Yeah, I would say that's stating it a little lightly.
Yeah, I mean, I have no personal knowledge or experience to know if it was difficult under Nazi occupation, but I can make some assumptions. So thank you, King Splendor, for that episode title. We actually get all of our episode title suggestions from our awesome guild members on Board Game Geek. So if you go over to guild number 2008 on BoardGameGeek.com, you can join us every other week or sometimes every 3 weeks for our Dukes on Deck post, where we'll talk about the games that we're going to be discussing in the show, and people can give contributions, including naming episodes. So we'll give you the runners up for the episode title at the end of the podcast. All right. Well, Alex, we're in 251. So
Yes.
So we're on the downhill to episode 500.
The countdown, 249 episodes left.
Yep, there you go. How you doing?
I mean, I'm fine. I had the day off of work. It's the start of a 4-day weekend. We're recording this on a Friday before Memorial Day. Summer is here. It's also very cloudy here for whatever reason. But, I'm fine. I think the bigger question is, how are you?
Oh, not great. No, not particularly great. So we delayed the episode a week. The Friday that we were to record, my grandmother, my Nana, she passed away that Tuesday. Yesterday we had the funeral. I didn't want to delay another week, so I'm here. I'm in it. Let's do this. Probably not ready to really talk too much about it. It's been a rough week and a half, and lots of extended family time, lots of late nights, trying to be there for my grandfather. They were married almost 70 years, which is a heck of a long time. And trying to be there for my mom. And so yeah, it's been rough. It's been rough, but I appreciate, you posted it and some people in the guild said some nice things. So I appreciate that, but I'm not really, that's probably the extent of what I'm cool with saying at this point.
Were you able to at least take some time off? Because obviously running your own law firm can keep you plenty busy as is. I don't know if you were able to at least take some space from that. Yeah,
so I didn't. I took a full day off yesterday for the services and all of that, and then I left early a number of days. But the day after she passed, I had a full day trial. And I had already done a bunch of prep for it, but I had planned to finish prepping. Okay, well, all right. I got the call Monday from my grandfather who said, "Hey, you need to get here. We think your Nana's going to pass soon." And so I came, and the last moments of her being aware or cognizant, I was there for her. She said my name, she recognized me, and then she just was pretty much out on morphine, and very comfortable, very, very at peace. I expected her to pass in a couple days. She wound up passing the next day. In fact, I was literally getting in my car. It was about 1:00 on Tuesday. I was getting in my car. I brought with me all of the documents I needed to finish my prep for trial, and I was planning to just be there for everybody, and then do a little bit of work at my grandparents' house. And literally, as I was sitting down in my car, my mom called and said that she had just passed. So, yeah. So I wound up not preparing for trial that day, waking up at about 3:30 the next morning to be at the office around 4:35 and finish prepping. Boy, I kicked some serious butt at that trial, Alex. We won on every single issue. We got awarded attorney's fees as sanctions. It was an incredible trial.
You were a man inspired.
I was going to say I killed it, which is poor choice of words.
Oof.
So yeah, but other than that, and then I had a full day thing on Friday, and but I was able to take a little bit of time off. But it was, just kind of being over there with the family till 9:30 at night. Of course, we're trying to get Chewy back and keeping her on a good schedule. So it's been rough. I was joking with you. I've probably spent more time with my extended family over the last 10 days than I have over the last 10 years. And I literally mean that. So yeah, it's been a rough couple weeks.
Oof. Well, my condolences, obviously. And it was a no-brainer when you were, hey, we need to probably push this back a week. Yeah. And would have done so further if need be. But
oh, sure.
I know we like staying in the rhythm. Yeah, fair enough.
She was Nana Marge. She was a huge fan of the Dukes of Dice. She would have been
was she really?
Sorely disappointed if we delayed another week.
I don't want to have to deal with that. Yeah, that hate mail. Fair enough.
She did teach me. She did teach me my first games. She taught me War.
Okay.
She taught me checkers, and then eventually War became blackjack.
Nice.
And she was, her favorite saying was she's a terrible role model because she liked to drink, smoke, and gamble. And yeah, her and my grandfather were taking me to casinos when I was like 14.
Oh, wow.
So there was definitely an element of gaming to Nana. Nana loved to play games, Old Maid, and all that. Crazy Eights, Go Fish. We played a ton of that when I was a wee one.
It is always interesting thinking back on that, right? Because I a few episodes ago, at this point, when my grandmother passed away, there was that moment of reflection of, oh, yeah, we played games together. We played cribbage. We tried some of these other things. She loved bridge. And so it sounds like you had that same kind of connection with your grandmother, too.
Yeah, very much so. And she was very close. She was very close with Raquel, very close with Mariah. It was hard with Chewy because Chewy, my grandmother had terrible hearing. The last 10 years, she had like 8 different hearing aids and just very difficulty hearing. And as a 4 or 5 year old, 6 year old, it's hard to kind of know how to get across your point to someone that can't hear you very well. And as adults, we struggled. And so I think that was kind of always like something that made me a little sad is like they couldn't connect as well. Like her and Chewy and my grandfather are incredibly close. But her and my Nana were not, and just because of that inability to hear. So, but her and Mariah, she loved Mariah, she loved Raquel, she loved the whole family. It was we all had a very, very close relationship with her. So
it's rough. Even if it's expected, it's still rough.
Yeah, and it wasn't quite expected.
Yeah, fair. Oof.
But
hey. Anyway.
89 years old. She was a Marine. She had full military honors. So Marine color guard, I think, is that the term? They showed up, they played taps, they presented the flag to my grandfather. They met in the Marines back in 52, I believe, 1952, right after he got home from Korea. Yeah.
That's such an incredible amount of life to spend with someone, too.
Crazy. It's crazy.
Wow.
But hey,
board games, right?
Board games.
I will. So this is another tangent before we dive into games, Sean. I have been learning to play hockey over the past number of weeks.
I saw that post.
Yeah, you saw the video?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this past weekend was my first ever scrimmage. So this was week 5 of learning to play hockey, and they had us all do a scrimmage. A lot of folks didn't know the rules of the game. They would line up in kind of the wrong spots. There was one referee. It was the second game ever refereeing. Everyone was learning. It was fun. Oh my goodness, do I have a new appreciation for how exhausting that sport is.
I imagine.
They talk about 30-second to minute-long shifts, but because of the number of players, you were playing effectively a 50-minute game with 11 players. So most of that time, about half that time, you were on the ice, maybe slightly less.
Yeah.
Oh, that took it out of me. I was absolutely done. I can skate decently quickly, but as the video that Sean saw shows, lacking a little bit on the skill in some parts. Sure. Crash into a goalie. It's a no-check league. Didn't stop me from accidentally checking a couple of people, as the video showed. Missing a couple pucks on breakaways. I iced the puck a bunch for folks who know hockey, but I did get a not super fancy looking, but still it counts anyway, goal that I celebrated in pretty fun fashion. So I'm having a blast playing hockey. It's been a lot of fun. I'm carrying on with that program through the rest of the summer. The next scrimmage is in mid-July. That's the last week of the Learn to Play stuff. Have to figure out what to do after that. Who knows how the baby affects things. But yeah, that's my side. More kind of fun, I guess.
That sounds a little bit more fun than a family member passing.
Yeah, just a little bit. Anyway, so games. Hey, games. And Sean, given the what's been going on, you actually had some recent plays, but we figured we'd save those. Yeah. Because our timing is routinely terrible with these episodes. And sure enough, not this past week that we're recording, but the week before, the Spiel and Kennerspiel nominees were announced. And for folks who don't know, the Spiel des Jahres is the German Game of the Year award. A lot of classic games come out of it. It's a good way of gauging what are going to be really hot games on the scene. Anyone that is nominated will sell hundreds of thousands of copies. Anyone who wins tends to sell millions of copies. It's a big deal kind of award. And we've seen a lot of amazing games come out of this. We've covered it every year since the podcast started. And what's that, Sean?
I'm clapping for you, Alex.
Why are you clapping?
This is the first time in almost 7 years where we've mentioned the SDJ. Yes. And you've actually described it and for some of our listeners who may not know anything about it before launching into it. So bravo.
Thank you. Thank you. At some point, I'm going to learn. Who knows how many times it'll take. They say the 7th time's the charm. That's the classic saying. So for folks who've been recently plugged into the hobby, when we last left the Spiel des Jahres, we had in the Spiel category a game called Pictures won. I have still not played this game. I have played Nova Luna, which was nominated, and I've really wanted to play My City, which was also nominated. Neither of those won. It was Pictures that won. Haven't played it. But we have now played and reviewed, actually, all 3 of last year's Kennerspiel nominees, Cartographers, The Crew, and The King's Dilemma. Obviously, the review game for this episode, The Crew being the winner of that. So that gives you a sense. There's the Spiel, which is kind of the core game of the year, which has been done for decades. You have the Kennerspiel, or Connoisseur Game of the Year, which has been done since 2011. So this is, we're 10 years in, or 11 years in, technically, on the award. And then the Children's Game of the Year is the Kinderspiel des Jahres. So all of them were laid out, but... we'll get to it, but there was one of the Kennerspiel nominees this year that had me just absolutely throw up my hands. So let's talk about the Spiel nominees first. First up, you have Zombie Teens from Asmodee. I think it might be a more specific publisher, but it's broadly in the Asmodee family. Designed by Annick Lobet. Could be Lobet. My apologies, Annick. This is a sequel to Zombie Kids Evolution, which is more of a kids game. You're trying to find ingredients, brew an antidote, save the world. And I'm going to give the weight ratings for these, Sean, for a reason that will become clear at the very end of all of these.
Very good. Yes.
Yes. This has a BGG weight rating of a 1.3. To give some quick context on BGG weight ratings.
Holy cow! I'm in shock right now. Go on.
Yes.
Keep going.
BGG weight
all
ratings.
The explanations.
Yes, a 1. It's basically a game can get scored 1 to 5, effectively light to heavy. There's light, medium, heavy, heavy. Light corresponds to 1, heavy corresponds to 5. So the lower the number, theoretically, the easier the game is. You can't get lower than a 1.
You can't?
I don't think so, because the rating scale...
Yeah, you may be right.
The rating scale that BGG has you use only lets you rate light, medium, heavy, heavy. Not in the order I just read it in, which was buck wild, but you get the idea. So that's Zombie Teens. I have that one on back order. I'll try that one hopefully sometime in the next few weeks. Micro Macro Crime City from Pegasus Spiel, designed by Johannes Sich, or Sitch, not sure. This is a crime-solving game. It's effectively Where's Waldo meets Sherlock Holmes. You have a giant, and I mean a giant map with a bunch of crimes that are kind of in progress, and the box cover demonstrates this, but basically you'll have someone in one frame, and then you can kind of track them, and then they're somewhere else. There's another character near them. My understanding of the game is you'll have cards with cases on them. They'll ask you to solve a mystery of some kind. You will look very closely at this giant map to try and solve the mystery. This has a straight 1.0 in terms of difficulty. But I get, not difficulty, but weight rating. This would never be a Kinderspiel, mainly because of subject matter, but the mechanics look unbelievably light. In any case, that's Micro Macro Crime City, the other nominee. The third one is The Adventures of Robin Hood by Cosmos, designed by Michael Menzel. Michael Menzel is a previous Kennerspiel winner with Legends of Andor. This is a co-op. There's sort of a changing story living game board. It describes some innovative movement mechanisms, which I haven't quite gotten into, but it does look interesting. It has a weight rating of a 1.74 on average. That's The Adventures of Robin Hood. So those are your Spiel nominees. Sean, any thoughts on any of these? I take it you haven't played any of them.
I have not played any of them. The micro macro card, was it Micro Macro Card City?
Crime City
Looks really interesting. I'm very much interested in that. Zombie Teens Evolution, I have zero opinion on. Doesn't look super appealing. It's using so teens is spelled with a Z and kids was spelled with a Z. You know, super hip. This is like 1998.
Yes.
96. And then what was the other one? Where'd it go?
The Adventures of Robin Hood.
Oh, yeah. Didn't look too thrilling to me.
It has, much like My City the previous year, it has some legacy elements to it where things are going to change and adjust and the story evolves and unfolds. And I'm intrigued by that. I also tend to like a lot of what Cosmos does as a company. Mm-hmm. So I am intrigued by this one, and at least the design pedigree is there, just in the sense of I know this designer. I have not played Legends of Andor, but he has a track record. So there you go. Those are your three Spiel. Hard to say who's the favorite with this one. I mean, especially having not played any of them. It certainly seems like Micro Macro Crime City is the most different of the bunch.
Right.
So it wouldn't surprise me to see that get honored. Again, going back, you had pictures last year, the year before for this category. You had just one, which has stuck around quite well. And then you had Azul. So the winners of these categories tend to be pretty pervasive. King Domino the year before. Yeah. So those are your three Spiel nominees. Now we get to the Kennerspiel nominees. And again, these tend to be a little on the heftier side, right? Or they're supposed to be. They're more to, gamers' games. They're supposed to be to a slightly more experienced audience generally. And we've seen that definition evolve wildly. If I look back on 2017, Terraforming Mars was one of the nominees, but it was also nominated at the same time as Exit the Game, the game series. If you go further back, right, when we first started doing the podcast, you had Broom Service Elysium Orleans was one of the first ones we covered. But generally speaking, they tend to be at least in the light medium spectrum of games. So let's talk about the three we have. We have Paleo from Z-Man Games, designed by Peter Rustemeyer. This is a cooperative caveman adventure. I know not much else in terms of what sets this one apart, but a 2.65 weight rating. So right in that light-medium spectrum. Right there. Next up, you have Lost Ruins of Arnak from CGE. A lot of folks familiar with this one. Designed by Min and Elwin. Deck building plus worker placement. We've reviewed it. A lot of folks are familiar with it. Weight rating of a 2.81. Then you had something that came completely out of left field, and I had to double check and make sure this was not a typo, because the last one in the Kennerspiel group is Fantasy Realms. Fantasy Realms from WizKids. This was a 2017 game on BGG. Designed by Bruce Glasgow, who also did Betrayal at House on the Hill. The newly released Red Rising is basically takes a lot of concepts from Fantasy Realms, repackages them, does a whole bunch of different things with them. But that's the core of that. It is a very simple hand management set collection game. On your turn, you are drawing a card from the deck or one that's face up, and you are discarding a card. The game is just a deck of cards and a rulebook. It may have a score pad, it may not. And look, you can have some more complicated games that are just a deck of cards. Hanamakoji is a great example. Or not Hanamakoji, Matainai is a great example of that. Wow. But this is not that. And the weight rating reflects it. You have a 1.76 weight rating, which, if you'll recall, in the Spiel category, you had 1.74 was kind of the top end of that. So I was absolutely baffled when I saw this. Sean, you haven't had a chance to play Fantasy Realms yet, have you?
No, I have not.
Okay. If you do, I think you will have a similar kind of reaction to it, because I just described the mechanics. It's a hand management game. You're drawing a card, you're trying to see if you can kind of get a decent combination in your hand, but the mechanics themselves are not particularly deep. This is one that I would happily teach to my folks, to anyone in my gaming circle. This could be an absolute gateway game. To its credit, I think if this were nominated in the Spiel, I would not have batted an eye. Yeah, I was stunned when I saw this. I think it's the absolute wrong category for this game. So, anyway.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on the category as a whole this year, Sean?
Well, we've said over the last couple of years, and I think there's a lot of people that will echo this, is that the Kennerspiel has progressively gotten lighter and lighter. And I think that's just a trend that's continuing. So, I would say a lot of the very early nominees and the very early winners were definitely what we would call at least medium to possibly medium heavy, and that no longer seems to be the case. So,
yeah. Well, there you go. I would say the favorite, just based on discussion and how well received it's been, would probably be Lost Ruins of Arnak. I would tend to think that is probably where I put my money if I had to guess as to who would win. You have a sense of this one, Sean?
No. I mean, obviously I'm partial to Lost Ruins of Arnak. Number one, because it's the only one I've played. Number two, because I liked it quite a bit. I've seen Paleo, and I've got some sense of Fantasy Realms. And did you point out, you mentioned it's a 2017 release, but for purposes of the Spiel and the Kennerspiel, it's because of it's when it's available in German language.
Right. And yeah, what's an interesting dynamic of that is usually it's a game that is available in Germany and then will become available in the US, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So not always, to be clear. Terraforming Mars, I think there was a little bit of a delay between when it was released in the US and then when it was available and then nominated for the Spiel and Kennerspiel. But yeah, it has typically been the other way around.
Right.
So. Right. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't played Paleo. I know very little about it, but I have played the other two a good amount. I would tend to think Lost Ruins of Arnak should be the favorite in this category. But again, I have a blind spot with Paleo, so I really don't know how that one might factor in. So,
yeah.
There you go. Well, that'll do it for our Spiel and Kennerspiel 2021 discussion. We'll see when winners get announced, what happens, what doesn't. There always tends to be a little surprise in there, but congrats to everyone nominated. Even if I picked a bone with what category you were nominated in, it's still a huge a huge recognition to even have your name in the group. So there you go, the Spiel and Kennerspiel. After the break, our review of a prior Kennerspiel nominee, The King's Dilemma. Well, Sean, the Game Toppers 3.0 Kickstarter is in the books, and thanks to a whole bunch of backers, Game Toppers had a heck of a Kickstarter campaign, more than $800,000 raised to get more Game Toppers, new features, all sorts of fun stuff headed folks' way.
Wait, did you say 800,000?
I did say that amount. Yes.
Oh my goodness. That's a ton of money.
Sean, did you make it in time? Are you part of that group?
Wait, it's over? It's over? Like over?
No, it's done. I'm sorry you missed your window. But the good news, Sean, is that if you keep an eye on the Game Toppers LLC website, the late pledge manager should be open in the near future. Take a look there, and you can still get in on all the fun, get the newest features, get yourself a Watson, or get yourself, I don't know, whatever you want. Awesome game mats, rails, something cool to really take your gaming experience to the next level without getting a fully dedicated gaming table, which is exactly what Game Toppers is all about. Check them out, GameToppersLLC.com, because if it ain't a showstopper, it ain't a Game Topper. If Game of Thrones taught us anything, it's that the real power isn't necessarily on the throne, but the power behind the throne, the Council of Advisors. Well, the King's Dilemma is going to thrust you into that role, having you advise on epic decisions in a fantasy kingdom where terrible, terrible, terrible things happen. Is this a terrible, terrible, terrible game or an amazing immersive experience? We'll tell you. It's the King's Dilemma.
So I'll take issue with that, Alex. I think if Game of Thrones taught us anything, it's the importance of sticking the landing. But I digress. Yikes.
Look, not all of my intros are winners, okay? And not all show endings are winners.
Yeah, well, you were saying from a thematic and narrative point of view.
Yes.
I was saying more from a meta point of view. Anyway, let's talk about The King's Dilemma, designed by Hjalmar Hock, Lorenzo Silva, with art by Giorgio Baroni and Giulia Giggini. This is published by Horrible Guild, and The King's Dilemma is a legacy-style game. I don't know if they refer to it as a legacy-style game, but it uses what they call, and I had it here and now I lost it.
It's an interactive narrative experience with legacy elements.
Oh, with legacy elements. Right.
Much like Baseball Highlights 2045, first mention, is a tactical card game with deck-building elements.
Oh, there it is. It's the Dilemma card system. Trademark. So we're hopefully going to see other games that use this dilemma card system. So in The King's Dilemma, players become the representatives of various influential families or houses and members of the King's Council. Historically, the Kings of Onkist. Did you pronounce it Onkist? I always called it Onkist.
I mean, probably right. Something like that.
Well, historically, Alex, the kings of Onkist always place an absolute trust in their council, so the real power lies in their hands. They are the real leaders of the government of Onkist. Each round, you will draw a card from the bottom of the dilemma deck and experience the game's story unfold. Each card is unique, and it will pose you a problem or dilemma that the council will have to solve on the king's behalf. You will have to discuss, bargain, and make decisions that will shape the story of the game and determine the fate of the Kingdom of Onkist. Each time a dilemma card is resolved, it is permanently removed from the dilemma deck. Occasionally, though, your decisions will result in the addition of completely new cards to the deck, unlocking new events that will happen in the future as consequences of your decisions. You will have to keep the kingdom going while also seeking an advantage for your own house. This power struggle may lead the kingdom into war, famine, or riot, or it could generate wealth and well-being. It will depend on your choices. Each decision has consequences, though. What is good for the kingdom as a whole may be bad for your house. Will you act for the greater good? The greater good. Or will you think only of yourself? So each game of the King's Dilemma, which for me was probably about 45 minutes, maybe closer to an hour, but each game of it is basically a generation. So it's a different king, essentially, in every game, and that king is either going to die of old age or be required to abdicate the throne for various reasons, and I'll describe why. And you are representing your house, and so you are a different generation each time, a different family member of that house, and so you may have different wants and desires from one generation to the other. Ultimately, and we have to be very careful because this is a legacy style game. We don't want to spoil any events, but I also have to be clear that where it talks about how do you win the campaign, the rule book doesn't really tell you. It says, we can't tell you. You do know that you're trying to gain prestige points and crave points. They are these little white crowns for prestige, black crowns for crave, and you don't necessarily know the significance of what that means. Well, I'll leave it at that because I got to be very careful here.
Oh yeah, you got to tread lightly with this one.
Yes. So let's talk about an individual game. You're going to start by getting one of 6 secret agenda cards. And by the way, this game plays up to 5. And so in a 5-player game, you will never see, you won't see one of the agendas. And basically the agendas are chosen in reverse prestige order. So lowest prestige. And there's some tiebreakers that can happen there. And it's going to tell you exactly where you want the various resources in the game to be relative to one another on the stability track. And there are 5 resources, and then there's sort of the stability is sort of the super resource. So you have influence, which represents the strength of your army and your reputation in the eyes of other countries. You have wealth, which is just, amount of money that's in the royal treasury, the luxury resources you have. You have morale, which is the happiness of your people, how positive they are about their lives and their condition. Welfare is the health of your population and the amount and availability of necessary resources for living. And then knowledge, which is just the quantity and quality of the technological and medical advances achieved by your kingdom and some various things. I'm kind of truncating what all of these things mean, but just to give you a basic idea. And so there is the biggest part of the player board, or the main board, is the stability track. It takes up a good half of it. And so at the start of the game, I can say this. And these may change from one game to the next, but everything will start in the middle. And throughout the course of the game, you will take actions that may result in wealth increasing or wealth decreasing, influence increasing or decreasing. And sometimes multiple of these resources will increase or decrease or opposite one another during the course of a round. And anytime any one resource goes up or down, then that kind of super resource, the stability, goes up or down. And so if the stability marker ever reaches the tippy top or the bottomy bottom, that's going to trigger the end game, because basically if you've raised the stability so high for that particular generation, then the council has kind of gotten too big for their britches, and the king is forced to abdicate because the council's now wielding too much power in the open. And then if it goes to the bottom, the kingdom is doing so badly that generation that the king's like, I need to get out of here, otherwise I'm going to get, executed. Otherwise, once a certain number of dilemma cards get revealed and there's a certain variability to it, that just means that enough time has passed and the king has died, and that also triggers the end game, and then you score things up. Now, going back to the agenda cards I talked about, the agenda cards are going to tell you where you want certain resources to be, either in absolute positions on the stability track or maybe relative to one another. And depending on how well you get these things in certain bands, will give you a certain amount of points, variable amount of points. And then additionally, the agendas will give you a variable amount of points depending if you come first or second in the amount of accumulated coins, gold, at the end of the game for your particular house. And certain cards value it more. So I think it's like if you have the rebel agenda, you don't care so much about having money, I think.
Correct.
Right. All right. So you're going to choose those secretly. And I think what's interesting is if I have the most prestige, then the person with the second most prestige is going to know exactly which card they're giving me in a 5-player game. I find that pretty interesting. Actually, in all player counts, now that I think about it. And so this is not I wouldn't call this a social game or a social deduction game necessarily, because you have hard mechanics you're trying to follow because you're trying to arrange these different resources onto the stability track in certain ways. Additionally, depending on which house you have, which is the house you have throughout the game, you have these certain conditions listed out on the right-hand side, where if you complete them at the end of the game, you get a little checkbox, and the more you do that, you unlock certain asymmetric powers. So you have that as a competing interest. You have your agenda as a competing interest. And I should probably leave it at that, not to spoil anything else.
Did you talk about stickers?
Well, I'm getting to that. No, I meant not the whole rules thing, but just in terms of
fair.
What else may cause you to have varying goals in the game, because other things may or may not come up.
Your family, your house.
Yeah, your house. Well, that's what I'm saying. You've got the things, the extra abilities that you can unlock,
right,
if you do certain things. So that's something that pushes you. Additionally, each time you have a certain agenda, you check off a box on your house, which can also give you prestige or crave or whatever. Okay, so let's talk about a round. So you started the game, you have your agenda, you're going to start with some money, you're also going to start with some power. And so the first thing you'll do is you'll flip over a dilemma. And it gives you this brief little narrative that says, this person has come to town and they want to do X, or they can do Y. If you do X, this might happen. If you do Y, this might happen. And so it tells you that one option may reduce the kingdom's wealth. It may say this other option may increase the kingdom's knowledge, for example. I'll make something up. Someone comes to town, and if you buy their goods, then your knowledge will go up. Because it's it's books, whatever, but it's going to cost a lot of money that you can't afford, and so your wealth will go down, for example. So some of the effects could also be these positive or negative stickers, which get applied to the board's chronicle area, which will affect where the resources start in subsequent games. And there's some other factors there that can. So, for example, if some of them pertain to each of the different resources. And so if I have a majority control in those resources, because when those stickers come out, I'm going to sign them, then I'm going to get an additional type of goal to have that particular resource be the highest or possibly lowest at the end of the game. Lot going on there. But I think what's really interesting is the cards on the front give you some idea of what's going to happen, that this might go up or down, this type of sticker might come out, but they don't tell you necessarily the severity. And I won't say anything else. Something else I could say there, and I won't say it. All right. So now what's going to happen is you're going to vote. Everyone has 3 cards, a yay, a nay, and an abstain card. And beginning with the leader, which is at the beginning of the game determined by the player with the most prestige, then they're going to vote yay, nay, or abstain. If you vote yay or nay, you're going to take some amount of power from behind your board, these little tokens, and you're going to put it in that particular card in front of you. And then it's going to continue around. And now if you decide to abstain, you're either going to, at that point, share in leftover power that's accumulated on the board, or you're going to take the, is it the speaker token?
The leader token.
No, not the leader token.
The moderator token.
The moderator token. There we go. The moderator token who breaks ties. Okay. Now here's what's interesting too. At any time, if you have the most power on one of your cards, you become the new leader. And it will continue around until the player to the right of the leader, because you're going clockwise. The player to the right of the leader is going to have the last vote. But again, that can get reset if someone's going to bid and overbid. And during this whole process, there's some deal making. Hey, before you vote, if you want to vote nay in this way, I'll give you two coins, or I promise to do something later, whatever. So some wheeling and dealing there. So once that all goes around, you add up the total power for all of the yays, the total power for all of the nays, and then you flip over the card and you read the results. And so sometimes it will do what it says it's going to do in terms of moving a particular resource up or down. And then it may also tell you to open up an envelope, a numbered envelope, because I think there's like 70, 80 envelopes in the box there. You open it up, you add it to, sometimes there's a story card that happens, and whoever was the leader of the winning side gets to sign that particular story card, which may or may not have an effect, and it may or may not add new dilemmas to the deck, these kind of different branching story paths, and then you continue. And all the while you're watching the various resources go up and down. You're watching people accumulate money, accumulate more power, losing power, making terrible deals and getting stabbed in the back. I should mention the moderator too. They break the ties, and they can be bargained with too. Hey, if you break the tie in my favor, I'll give you $1. I'll give you $2. And so you continue until one of the end game conditions is met. And then you're going to add up points for where you're at on, for your agenda card in terms of where the resources are. You're going to get points for that first or second in terms of coins. You're going to score points for who has the most leftover power, who has the second most leftover power. And then in second and subsequent games, you're going to also score points for any of the special resources based on who had that majority in those Chronicle stickers that I mentioned before. And based on that, you're going to get some amount of prestige points, some amount of crave points. Generally, prestige points are given for more of them are for first place, second place, and more crave points are given for the lower points or lower placings. Except
if things are so bad in the kingdom, if you finish first, and you are considered to be most responsible for that, so you will get a big reward of crave, which, correct, again, we won't disclose because it would be a spoiler, but also don't know exactly how those play into the end game.
Correct. So that's how an individual game works. There's all of these narratives, all of these stories that you're kind of unfolding and unpacking. So Alex, what was your initial expectation of the King's Dilemma when you first heard about it?
I was pumped for the King's Dilemma when I heard about it, because you have deep storytelling in a game like this, a game that you can play in a legacy setting that focuses on the story, and the concept of being on a king's council and doing either incompetent or evil things, and having debates about it, and taking actions not in the best interest. I don't know. For whatever reason, I was in from hearing the description of this game. I was in. And unfortunately, when I had learned about it, was when it got nominated for the Kennerspiel, which was right about when COVID was unfolding. So it took a while to get a campaign going. I'm glad it happened. But yeah, I was very much in, and this is the first ever legacy game, Sean, that I bought to ensure a campaign got run of this. So that gives you a sense of how in on this I was in terms of first expectations. What about you, Sean?
Oh, yeah. I thought this sounded great. You know, I love legacy games, and I like you, I wanted one that was very much, more story-driven, because so for example, in Pandemic Legacy, you get bits and pieces of story, right? But it's still a very it's still Pandemic at its heart, right? A very mechanically driven game. But yeah, I was very excited for this, and I was really happy when the availability for this became greater, and also when things were able to open up a little bit more. So yeah. What I will say is my expectation, though, when I heard that there's some deal making, some negotiation, I was a little worried that might turn you off.
So I was worried about that. I was worried about, because this has both standard deal making and negotiation, and it has open-ended deal-making and negotiation. Mm-hmm. And one of my least favorite game experiences of all time, we've talked about it plenty on this, is Nothing Personal, a game that makes this is at its core. So yeah, there was a little thing in the back of my mind that was worried about that specifically. But it was not enough to it wasn't enough to dampen my excitement, really.
Okay. Yeah, and like you said, there's both binding and open-ended, right? You have the choice which you're going to engage in any particular deal. So it specifically says if you agree to do something for money, as soon as that money changes hands, you're bound. You are bound to do that thing that you agree to. But if it's more open-ended, like, well, yeah, if you vote yay now, on the next one, I'll vote with you, whichever it is, at least one power. And that's not binding.
So Sean, I will, this is jumping the gun in all sorts of ways on the review, but I will mention that one of my favorite moments from a recent session of this, doesn't have any spoilers, by the way, there was a decision that came up where I was not in. I didn't really necessarily care which way the thing went, but I had the moderator token, which can either be incredibly not useful at all or unbelievably powerful, depending on the situation. And there was a deal that came up, and Jamie, who I've been playing with, said, hey, I will give you some coins, a good amount of coins, if you'll go in with at least 2 power on this. I said, yeah, great. I took the money. I put in the power. But the vote ended up being a tie. And what I made clear was, hey, look, I took your money, I put in my power, I fulfilled that part of the deal. But I didn't necessarily fulfill the part of the deal that says I have to rule in your favor. Mm-hmm. So I then used that to extort additional money out of Jamie. So yeah, the letter of the law helped me out there. But in any case, that kind of tells you how deal making can work in this game.
Okay, all right, let's take a quick aside here. I found it interesting when you said that part of the deal was that you bid or that you vote with at least 2 power.
Yes.
At least 2 power.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to lay a scenario out for you.
Oh, boy.
Okay. I told someone, I will pay you 5 gold. Yeah, that's right, 5. Single largest transaction I'd made in any of the games I played. I will pay you 5 gold if you bid 2 nay. 2 nay. Maybe it was yay. I don't know. You bid 2. And the way this was designed, I think I had already bid like 3 or 4 or something like that. And because basically I wanted to maintain leadership because I wanted to be able to
take credit for it.
Yep. You get bonuses for having done that. And so this person agreed. He took my money, and then subsequently he bid 4.
Okay. Interesting.
Is that the letter of our agreement?
I think it depends on how you phrased it and the understanding.
I said I will pay you 5 to bid 2 nay. Not at least 2 nay, not 2 or more.
Yeah, sure.
Because I was willing to pay that much money so that.
So here's what I would say, Sean. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna re-lawyer this and we'll see if this works out.
You're gonna be wrong, but go on.
That's fine. But they fulfilled the agreement as soon as they put in 2 power.
No, that's no.
Hang on.
Nope, that's false.
You didn't say exactly 2 power.
No. Oh, no. 2 does not equal 4.
I agree.
It's not 2 or more. And that's the argument that was being made.
All right.
I mean, so from a contract drafting perspective, which is essentially what this was, 2 does not equal 4, right?
Yeah.
I did not say 2 or more. I did not say at least 2. It was a specific integer, and 4 is not the same integer that 2 is.
So what I would have, see, my thought process is probably what this other person's, which is, hey, I did 2 power, and then on my own separate side deal with myself, I added in 2 more power.
Well, and that's the question: was that not? Did that not go outside the agreement?
Here's how I probably would have handled this, Sean. I would have had the moderator decide what the deal meant.
Well, we wound up just giving the money back.
Oh, I see. Okay, you unwound the deal.
Yeah, because it was clear what I was trying to do.
Sure. Seems like a fine resolution to that.
And here's what I said. Here's what I specifically said. I said, if you were to bid 2, and then, so I would have still been the leader, and then someone reopened the leader, so that that it kept going, and he had then bid another 2 on top of it,
Sure.
I would have been annoyed. I would have been ticked off, but I don't think that would have been a violation of the agreement.
Sure. No, I get why I can see your side of this for sure.
Yeah.
I think you could have phrased things better at the start of the deal. I think you could have said, I will pay you to bid exactly and no more than 2 power on this.
Well, yeah, if I wanted to have the full exclusion where I didn't want him to bid anything else even later,
Sure.
I certainly could have said that.
Absolutely.
I didn't think it would get to that point, and it didn't, or it wouldn't have. Just kind of based on everything I was feeling out. But yeah, so
yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting situation. We have not run into anything similar, but I have seen, by the way, a deal that was a 17 coins, I think is the largest deal that was conducted. Yeah. Anyway, you can have some pretty decisions that you think are pretty weighty, and we're so out of order on this review, it's not even funny. So I'll tell the story when we get to it, but let's step over to rulebook. Sean, did you learn this game from the rulebook, from some other source? How'd you learn this game?
Oh yeah, I learned this from the rulebook, and it is a pretty meaty rulebook. It is, oh my goodness, I'm still even in shock right now. So let's see, it's like a 50-page rulebook, 48 pages.
Yeah.
Of that, let's see, it looks like up to page 35 are the rules, and then it gives you a little bit of background about the world, and then there's a place to put mystery stickers on, and then there's your Realm Chronicles, which are your score sheets. And then there's a little handy index in the back, which I never have used to this point. But yeah, this was a read. This was a pretty sizable read, and I had to go back a couple times. It's again one of those 12 by 12 rule books that fits the entire board game box. But I mean, even though I had to go back a couple times, I don't know that I think it's pretty decent. And I do appreciate that all the examples they show, all of the cards from the game are, they've got dummy text on them,
right?
So that they're not spoiling anything. So I did appreciate that, but well, I don't know. I think it was kind of a dense read.
It is 100% a dense read. And what's so interesting about this, Sean, is a significant chunk of this rule section is not just on setting up a game, but on the legacy setup effects of games.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot dedicated to that in the rules, and it makes sense. But I will say that the setup of this game is perhaps the most mechanically dense piece of a lot of this game, because the game itself, as we've talked about, as you said in the rules, it is reasonably straightforward. You have a dilemma. Do you want to say yes, no, or I pass and become moderator? There's a flow to things that you'll pick up on as the game goes on, but it's not a mechanically crazy game by any means. I don't know, but yeah, it has a large accompanying rulebook, and it absolutely needs to. It needs to have that. I think for the most part, Sean, it was successful. I found myself finding what I needed to find. I had never used the index. It was easy enough to look up stuff. There were a couple of little minor slip-ups of, oh, this is how this resolves. Oh, this is how this works. One of them, for me, this isn't a spoiler, is you have different threads of stories that will kind of play out to the side of the board, some of which will have ongoing effects. How those are set up or figured out as the game goes on, some of that was occasionally a little unclear. But no, I think, broadly speaking, it was successful and did a good job of guiding you through. It's also a game that once you've played a few sessions, you pick up on the flow of things, you know what you're doing, you can just kind of get into it, and more of that time gets devoted to the game itself rather than the little intricacies in the rules. It does take a little bit of time to internalize, though.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, what about art and components?
So, yeah, let's talk about this. It's interesting because this is a legacy game, and it is not a replayable legacy game. It's not one of those that you can kind of unwind, reset up. This is once you've played through this campaign, you're done. It has some really cool component features to me, Sean. It has, you have built into the insert, you have a little trash slot where all of the dilemmas you've gone through before can kind of go right down the chute. You have a lot of envelopes that you'll open at various points in the game. Those are very nice envelopes. You have the cards are, to my mind, well laid out. The icons are crisp and clear. You have decent art that will kind of evoke the story in a lot of cases. I found the game very well playable. The player screens have your coat of arms on the back on one side, and then kind of spell out your house's story and some of their objectives and what they're trying to accomplish. It serves as a nice tracker. I generally think that the components of this were really successful. I have no strong complaints. Anything that came up for you, Sean?
No, I don't think so. I think it's all pretty thoughtful in terms of the components. I like the voting cards. So you've got your player screen, which hides your money and it hides your power behind it. But then you put your voting cards out in front of you, so it's very clear: red, blue, yellow for the abstain. And so I think it's a very solid production. I think the art on the cards, where it kind of is giving you pictures of what the particular storyline, what the events are, what the dilemma is, I think it's decent. I don't think it's fantastic, but I think it's certainly serviceable. I do like sort of the heraldry of the house shields that you have, the house screens. So I think it looks good. Let me say this real quick. This is sort of my quarantine. Well, it's not a quarantine caveat. It's my bereavement. What's the B word I need for alliteration? My bereavement.
Exception.
Wow. Quick on your feet, Alex. Quick on your feet.
That's why they hire me.
So I played one session of this, 3 rounds. Did we do 4? No, we did 3. And we did it back to back, 5 players. We all were having a great time. The following Wednesday, we were scheduled for another session, and that was the day after my grandmother passed. So I wasn't able to make that. And then I did plan on the next Wednesday because I said, okay, I do want to do this. I can use some time kind of to get out of the house, to have just some downtime, chill time. And then we wound up scheduling the funeral for the day after that next Wednesday. And so then that was just not going to happen. So I only have 3 plays of this in. I would... let me not say that. We're scheduled for next Wednesday, and hopefully I can play again because I'll give you this. I'm super excited to play some more.
Ooh, little spoiler.
Yeah.
Little review spoiler. So Sean, I will say for my part, we are 10 games into our campaign.
Ooh, jealous.
Yeah, it's been real good. We have, this is public intel. This is, of the 6 stickers you need to end the game, we have 2 of the 6 have been placed. So, so we have anywhere from a few to, it'll probably be a couple more sessions before we're done. The Chronicles, in the back of the rulebook, it leaves room for, I think, 23 games. I would be surprised if 15 seems about what we'll end up with by the end of all this. So, yeah. Sean, to go back, I will mention one thing with art and components, and I don't think this is the fault of the game. It's kind of a mix of I don't know if you found this to be true. Anytime you pass for power or for moderator, you take a coin. You take $1 onto your pass card. I would say people would routinely, and I mean routinely, forget that $1 was there.
That's so interesting that happened in your play group too, because it absolutely happened in ours.
Yep.
Like,
yeah,
consistently, and I don't know what it is.
So in thinking about this, Sean, I think you can help with this by taking the money directly and then tapping your card to show that you've passed for that round. I think that's a suggestion I'll try and implement the next time we play this, because it just keeps happening, and it's really annoying. But you need to see when people have passed. You need to see, can folks get in still? What side are people voting on? Who do I need to bribe? Whatever the case is, I think just tapping the pass card would be a good indicator and would serve the role just as effectively.
Gotcha. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, but then you're going to run into the problem of, oh, did I take my $1 or not? I don't think I took my $1. And there's no way to audit it, really.
No, absolutely no way. Yeah, it's rough. I would say $1 does not make a huge amount of difference when all said and done.
Highly disagree, but go on.
Okay. I mean, it can have an impact. Don't get me wrong. I don't know. For me, it's I would say getting rid of that annoyance for the risk of someone maybe double dipping on money is, I think, worth it, just because of how often this comes up.
Well, except that there are some houses that have some of their asymmetric achievements having a certain amount of money.
No, I know. There's all sorts, and right, there's money ranking at the end of a game. I get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't. It's tough. Tough call. Yeah. So Art and Components, Sean, on to gameplay. And we talked a lot in expectations about the promise of this game. Did this game live up to that promise in an engaging way for you?
Oh, it absolutely did for me. And I think what's interesting, this is not, while there may be some role-playing elements, this is not a role-playing game, right? You're not trying to really convince somebody of the moral dilemma, because everyone has their agenda, literally and figuratively, right? But maybe it's not that big of a deal that they go along with you in this particular instance. Maybe at stake is possibly increasing knowledge and decreasing wealth. And it just so happens that either outcome doesn't affect me. And so now I'm a hired gun. I'm willing to sell my vote, or I'm willing to do what I can to, well, let me say this. My very first game, I think I voted once.
Wow.
I spent almost the entire game passing or abstaining and keeping, or taking or keeping the moderator, and then getting bribed to break ties. Because my particular house, one of the achievements is having 18 gold. I think I need to do it 4 times, or 3 times, maybe it is 3 times, because I've done it. I did it all of our first 3 games. Get 18 gold. So that was my focus. And then from now on, and this is not a spoiler because it's on all of the cards, the screens. From now on, I start the game, I think it's with +1 power and +1 money.
Yeah, pretty nice.
Yeah. So it was just kind of fun, and it was really annoying people that I was wielding so much power, not actual game mechanic power, but just power and having that gold. And I got points for having the most gold at the end of the game and all sorts of stuff. So I think there's a lot of interesting decisions to make, because you don't exactly know when someone, you can get some indications that someone really cares about a particular resource, but you just may not be sure, right? And so what I like is that, yeah, you're trying to convince people, and you're maybe doing a little bit of role playing in that, but ultimately people are kind of locked in to what they want to do, but there's still room to maneuver, because sometimes the choices aren't that important for certain people. And I think my point here, getting to that long rambling point, is that you don't have to be good at trying to convince someone of something, right? You don't even necessarily have to be a master negotiator, because people are already sort of pushed in one direction and you can help nudge them. And so for people that dislike, like, think of like the Resistance or the Resistance Avalon, right? Where I'm like, I am positive, Alex, that you are a spy, and I'm going to turn the entire table against you. And I happen to be really good at that. And then it's a miserable experience for you. This doesn't have that, because the agendas are hidden, but they're there, and you each have your own inclination, so to speak. Does that make sense?
It totally does. Yeah. Well, and Sean, I'll go back a point, because you mentioned that this is not a role-playing game. And I will say one of the members of our group wanted to just try this. Come to the first session. Joe from Stonemeyer wanted to come to the first session, see if he liked it, and then have the flexibility to drop if need be. And to be clear, the game system does allow for this. The game system gives you 12 different houses to choose from. You can only play with 5 in any given game, and it makes it clear that you can add, drop, whatever the case is. It's best if you have the same group, right. But the game does not break by any means if someone has to leave and someone else jumps in and whatever else. It doesn't necessarily have a good catch-up mechanic for that person, but it doesn't break the game. But the big fear that he had was that it would be too role-playing heavy. And what I think is beautiful about this system and how it works is you could play it completely mechanically straight. You could play it as this is good for me, this is bad for me, I'm going to do what I can to manipulate, add the vote, hoard power, or bide my time, and I'm just going to worry about how to achieve this. You can play this game morally. Hey, this is a great thing for the kingdom, this is a terrible thing for the kingdom, and here's why. And you could play it not completely ignoring your character's motivations, your family's motivations. You could ignore all of that if you really wanted to. And I will say, this is kind of bleeding into theme a little bit, some of the choices in the game will lend themselves to a moral outcome in some cases rather than a strictly mechanical outcome. But the balance between that could potentially make folks uncomfortable. We'll get to that, I think, more in theme. You could play it also from a role-playing standpoint. Hey, my character this round is greedy. I am going to grease my palms and take moderator and just get as many bribes as I possibly can. Keep feeding me the bribes. I'm gonna talk about and justify every decision I make. And I'm going to put it in a thematic thing, and I might even do a voice. You could play it that way, and you would be playing it just as well, right? And still enjoying it. And I think that's part of the beauty of this game is it can appeal to those different play styles. And for the more purely moral one that isn't necessarily tied to your mechanics, it would probably punish you in that way. But if you just enjoy seeing a story play out and the twists and turns of this kingdom, it's super fascinating. Sean, I will add that one of the beautiful things to me in this system is there are decision points, obviously, at every turn. But you don't know which decisions will have truly long-term ramifications. And I can't dig into any specifics here, but I will say that there have been decisions we thought would have massive long-term implications and could send us down a very, very dark road that didn't really, they kind of fizzled out as a storyline. And then there are others that seem like the most simple, easy decision that can literally turn into war with another kingdom. Right? And I that is skirting very close to a spoiler. I don't think it is, though. More the point I'm making is you don't know the full long-term impact of these decisions, and it is amazing when something small like that can kind of snowball into something humongous. And it's equally hilarious when something that appears momentous is not. So I like that. I like how your decisions have impact and have meaning. There's a narrative to it. You can kind of tell the story of your family. And again, I know I'm bleeding way into theme, but part of the enjoyment of this game for me, Sean, and why I've loved this so much has been because of the interplay between those two parts. From a strictly gameplay standpoint, I love that turns are fast, right? Turns. There are some moments when people can really sit and hem and haw and think, how much power do I put in? How do I do this in a way where maybe I don't want credit for a decision, but I want something to go through. I'm incentivized to have the wealth of the kingdom get drained, but I don't want my family to be remembered for causing whatever this bad thing is. How can I manipulate things to have things go my way? The balance of accruing power and then using it on one big decision. You can have some really satisfying moments with that in this game. And the stories themselves are enjoyable. I should note, in terms of the legacy elements of this game, Sean, there are changes that come but the structure of the game stays fairly similar, at least in our game. So it's not like say a Pandemic Legacy where you have a completely different game by the end of things, and obviously we're not at the end of this campaign. But I don't know. I'm kind of rambling at this point, and it's easy to do when you get excited about a game like this. Sean, I mean, for folks at your table, did you have kind of a diversity of play styles, and what was the general vibe? Like, who are you playing this with?
So I played this with our buddy Chris Holm, with Strawman Matthew. I'll let you have one guess who the disagreement was about.
Okay.
Nick, and then a newer guy, Mike, that you haven't met, but he's a war gamer that I think I taught him. Well, I retaught him and Rory how to play imperial struggle. So yeah, I mean, I think a pretty eclectic group, all solid gamers, and there was definitely divergence in play styles. I would say what have you ever had two people agreeing so hard on something that they bankrupted each other's power?
Were you saying disagreeing on something, or agreeing but wanting to be the one to get credit for it?
Correct. So we had one where Nick and I kept upping each other, like, yes, we're totally, saving this baby from drowning. I just made that up.
Yeah.
Or it's funnier if it's no, don't let the baby drown. And we were just, I'm like, I should get this, right? Like, I think he's out of power. I'm like, all right, I'll do one more. Oh, he goes up 2. He's up on me again. And we just kept going back and forth to the point where I spent like 9 power, and then he spent 10, and I was out. And we both looked at each other at the end. And we're like, that was terrible. Why did we do that? But you're at a certain point, so any of the power that you spend and your side wins, that's spent. If you spend power, but your side loses, you retain your power, right? So we knew we were going to lose this power, and we just really wanted to be the one to get credit for this particular decision. And it hurt us that game. I think I still came in second points overall. But it was bad. It was very bad. And everyone else was having a great time laughing at us for being so foolish.
And it's funny because those debates and decisions can be over something so petty. Like, the core decision of it might be really huge, but the core decision of it may seem really small and might actually be really small. Right. Was it worth it? Was it was
not
it worth
for me?
One up? No, okay.
Not for me, and ultimately I don't think it was for Nick. But
there's some unpredictability. There's some uncertainty in that, which
Sure.
I think is part of what makes this game work so well. In terms of player count, Sean, I would advise that folks try and play this with 5 if they're going to run a campaign.
I think so. So I've seen this problem in certain negotiation games, or I'm thinking like Rising Sun, for example, where it's really good at a 5-player count, because sometimes you can have 2 teams of 2 align, and then you have the 5th person kind of playing off those 2 teams. In 4, I would feel like it would settle into 2 versus 2, and that lacks a certain dynamics, perhaps. I just can't imagine playing this with anything other than 5, and 3 is the minimum. I would, especially for a game that is going to get used up and destroyed and written on and stickers and all that, get the absolute best play experience and play it at 5, I think.
Yes. Yeah, the game recommends with 5, the same 5 if you can. I think That's the ideal way to do it.
Yeah, no, I think so too, 100%.
Very good. Theme, we discussed this pretty well in depth, I think, but I think it is key to note. And Sean, you have the rulebook handy for this?
Do you want me to read the disclaimer?
If that was what was coming to my mind.
Yes. So this game is set in a fictional and often cruel fantasy world. It was designed to put you in front of morally challenging situations and tough choices. Many of the dilemmas you will face involve ethical and moral choices related to sensitive topics that could upset your sensitivity or that of the people playing with you, such as injustice, violence, slavery, and discrimination. By design, the game will occasionally put you in front of the uncomfortable choice between what you think is right and what is best for winning. Remember that this is just a game and you're playing a fictional character. Even if the game world follows elements of the real world, nothing should be taken as real. None of the atrocities described in The King's Dilemma are in any way promoted, encouraged, or even considered as acceptable by the publisher, designers, scriptwriters, nor the distributors of this game.
Yeah, and I think that is a very apt disclaimer, because if you have this game does not shy away. It is not the darkest game I've ever played. I would say if I'm even just recalling from my limited amount of plays of what is that game? It was impossible to play because the rulebook was awful. It was based off of a video game. This War of Mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. It not quite that dark, but not that far away from being that dark at times with a lot of the story threads that occur. And when they say it puts you in some questionable moral decisions where what you are incentivized to do mechanically contradicts what you would want to do morally, and in sometimes some pretty severe ways. This game is not joking when it mentions that this happens. And at least in our kingdom, terrible, terrible things have happened. Terrible, terrible things by some just craven advisors. So there are a lot of skeletons in the closet. So just keep that in mind. If there is even a hint of something in there that says, "Ooh, I don't know if this is for me," trust that instinct, because I think the game is not joking when it gives that disclaimer.
And what I would say too, from a purely pragmatic standpoint, is you can use that to your advantage, right? If it's in your best interest to choose the morally right option, or to have that option prevail, and you have people on the fence, you can almost use that moral inclination to try and push them in that direction. Because I think as humans, unless you've decided, like, you're playing Skyrim or you're playing Fallout, and you're like, I'm just going to be as evil as possible, right? Unless you've actively made that decision, if you're on the fence, you might be able to get swayed into the more morally righteous position just as a general inclination. Whereas I did find that when I was trying to push people to choose the more questionable position, I'm doing everything I can to rationalize it and play it down. And because I think that human element is there, and maybe it only moves the needle, a couple percentage points, but that could be enough. That could be enough, to make someone only ask for $3 instead of $2.
Yeah. Yeah, might be the edge. So other thematic kind of discussion points here, Sean. I think the idea of open agendas in this game is really cool. So sometimes there will be a consequence where you are required to sign your name to a sticker, basically saying, "Hey, this decision that happened that really benefited the kingdom, that was us. Remember us?" And your family kind of has a reputation for being in favor of wealth in the kingdom. You'll get points for that, or negative points for that, because on the opposite side of it, "Hey, my family did this. Whoops." You can also get kind of negative credit for those. And they're nice story touches, but they are lingering legacy effects where your family is known for this for generations and generations until eventually enough time has passed that people just kind of forget. But that's executed beautifully in this game with the open agendas, the stickers, the aging of these chronicles, and the effects they have on the overall health of the kingdom. It is a wonderful system and a wonderfully thematic system. But even beyond all of that, Sean, and we don't really have a section for fun in our reviews, a lot of laughter in this, a lot of just the kinds of dilemmas that come up, how people will vote. Even just passing can be hilarious sometimes if done in the, "Yes, this is an incredibly momentous decision, but pass?" So, like, it's so hard to describe, but there's something beautifully engaging about this. Did you engage with this from a thematic standpoint, Sean? I'm assuming the answer is heck yes.
Yeah, 100%. Even, like, kind of like you were alluding to, man, even like trying to push people in a certain direction so that they invest a lot of power in it, and then, you abstain. But no, this was, I mean, the narrative is strong. It's a very strong narrative. You do feel like you are this bickering council. You reference Game of Thrones. You've got the what's the name of the council? The little no, what's it? So you got the Hand of the King. You've got the Master of Coin and the Master of Spies.
Yeah.
The small council. Yeah, that's what it felt like. You've got all these competing interests that you think everyone wants to see the kingdom prosper, but maybe they don't all want to see the kingdom prosper. Yeah, this felt like that. This felt like, you're sitting at the table in King's Landing and, pretending I'm Tyrion, because why not? and having a blast. It was fun. You're right. This was fun. Let's add a fun section. I give this very fun.
5 fun points. And I will say, because of the nature of how this unfolds, this feels like a living kingdom. Your decisions absolutely have an impact on how different threads are shaped, what happens when old storylines get brought back up. Your mind goes to, oh, yeah, that was Patrick that made that decision that sent them all out and put the kingdom in a whole heap of debt. Oh, that's, yeah. And when it comes up, your mind gets refreshed to those stories, and seeing how those play out is another really joyful part of the game. It takes a lot of unpredictable twists and turns. It's generally really well written, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And yeah, not a ton bad to say about this. So Sean, no guild thoughts here, but
interesting.
I'm ready to rumble. I think because of the timing of this. Again, it got popular right at the start of COVID, or kind of more known in the US. So I don't think there have been a ton of folks who've had an opportunity to play this.
Right.
I think you'll guess from our scores. This is one you should absolutely seek out. Before we jump into this, Sean, how does this one stack up? Well, maybe this would be part of your final thought and rating.
Okay.
How does this stack up with other legacy experiences that you've had?
Sure.
So you want to start off with your score first?
Yeah, so we rate everything here at the Dukes of Dice on a 6-point scale. 1 is poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. 6 is an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. And here we have the problems with legacy games, right? Because it's not something that I'm necessarily going to get to play again 15 years from now, 20 years from now, because it's a consumable product. And that may be fine, because there may be some 6s that I will only ever play 15 times, although I'm trying to think, like, I don't know. But that's always been something that's held back legacy games, or made it difficult for them to get higher scores. Now, I think well, we gave Pandemic Legacy Season 1, I think we both gave it boxcars, we both gave it a 6. I want to say I gave Charterstone a 5. I don't remember what you gave it.
Think a 5.
And so I think if there is, and I know like Jamie Segmeyer doesn't like the implication that a legacy game needs to have a strong narrative, because Charterstone didn't necessarily, but I do feel like in legacy games, there is now a spectrum, right? In the middle, you have Pandemic Legacy, which is very mechanically driven, but a pretty interesting narrative. Charterstone, much more mechanically driven, less of a narrative. And then King's Dilemma, slightly less mechanically driven, but super narrative, very strong narrative. So yeah, I'm gonna give this a 6, Alex.
Okay.
An all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. And again, I give that with the caveat that it's hard, because this isn't something I'm going to be able to return to. Now, if they make more dilemma card system games, oh boy, I'm down. You know, this, I think of something like the Crossroads system for Dead of Winter. There's also the pirate one that you guys are playing, you and Suze and Aaron and Lindsay. I'm not crazy about the Crossroads system. I think it's fine. I think it's interesting, but I'm not crazy about it. But this dilemma card system, I think it's really sweet. And I could totally see a sci-fi game. I could totally see, all sorts of different themes using this system. And so maybe that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that I think that this particular system is a 6. And it just so happened that I felt this theme within this particular system resonated, and it was very enjoyable. And again, this is on 3 plays. So what I fully expect is to have at least another 3 plays in the next week before our next episode. And I can certainly weigh back in to see if something has changed. I don't think it will have, but just again, realize that 6 is off of 3 plays, and only 3 plays. So I think I do want from my legacy games more narrative than not. And so while I appreciated a lot of things that Charterstone did, and appreciated the how the legacy and the unfolding of the mechanics occurred, I think when I'm coming to a legacy game, I'm really looking for an unfolding story, knowing that my decisions are impactful and long-reaching. So
yeah,
6.
6.
Yeah.
Sean, I think you will not be surprised to know I'm very much on the same track as you, and I've played 10 games of this, and I will give this our top score, a 6. It is a Boxcars winner.
Woo!
We love our legacy games if they can hit just right. There's something that in terms of how you mentioned you won't play this game 10 years from now, Sean, but you will remember this game 10 years from now. And I think there are so many of these moments that can come up in these games that imprint themselves when this kind of system is done right. The thematics of this have been really enjoyable. We've played every session 3 or 4 games, and I think that's a testament to it doesn't overstay its welcome. You want to see how the story unfolds. You want to see what happens next. You want to kind of manipulate the situation. You want to see where these different threads are going and what the conclusion might ultimately be. And that has driven an incredibly enjoyable experience, and I would give this my strongest recommendation, with the caveat that for some groups this won't be the right fit. Not because of play style, but maybe because of sensitivities or not wanting to dig into the moral side of things. And if that's you, totally get it, totally fine, totally understand it. For me, I love when things go wrong in hilarious ways. I love when failure is fun in a game, and the repeated failures of our Forsaken Kingdom have been incredibly enjoyable to me. And so, yeah, I give this one a straight 6. I hope more groups get a chance to play this now that the pandemic's lightening up. I think you'll find that if any of this sounded exciting to you, it will live up to that hype. So, yeah, 6 for me, no question about it. And if I'm comparing it to other Legacy games, I would agree. It feels like this and Charterstone are such completely different experiences. And I would say this and Pandemic, where a lot of those are maybe more mechanics-first experiences, even Pandemic Legacy, I would say, is more mechanics-first. This is story-first in a lot of ways. And that story piece of it, while the mechanics are there, the story piece of this is what keeps me coming back over and over and over and really wanting to dig into this world. So, yeah, I mean, it's an absolute home run.
All right, well, that's going to do it then for our review of The King's Dilemma. Boxcars. Man, when's the last time we gave a game Boxcars, Alex?
It's been a while. It's been a hot minute. Maybe The Mind? Did you give The Mind a 5 or a 6?
I don't know. It's a 6 now. I don't know that I gave it a 6 initially.
Okay, retroactive Boxcars. Anyway.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, that'll do it for The King's Dilemma. 6s from both of us. Give this one a try. Get your group and go dilemma some kings.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
All right, next up, a Dukes Quadruple-Take. Looking back at 2 episodes, episode 225, Filling the Void, where Abby and I reviewed Stellar, the 2-player game from Renegade, and episode 226, Solo at Home, where Sean and I reviewed Maquis. Sean, you listened back to both of these, so give me your take on what do we say about Stellar a year ago?
Yeah, so you wound up giving this a high 5, and it's a 2-player game, right? It's a 2-player game with telescopes and stars, and I don't know what else because I.
Yeah, super simple mechanic, basically kind of an open draft, kind of. I don't know. Not worth getting super into, but you're basically filling out your telescope. You're collecting different planets. You're trying to have more in different rows than your opponent. There's a lot going on in a small game, and really dug this one.
So you gave this a very high 5. You said this looks beautiful, plays well. You thought it was very innovative, and you thought that there was a chance for this to rise on the double take to a 6. At the time, you said, there's something that holds me back from giving it a 6, and you couldn't quite put your finger on it. And then Abby gave this a yeah, which is a 5 on the Abby scale. And she was very enthused that this was not about trains.
Yep.
So because it's not about trains, it's a great theme. However, the telescope was too fiddly. She said, yeah, this could get to a heck yeah at some point in the future. So what do you say, Alex? Has this risen to a 6 and or a heck yeah?
So we have played this since, which is usually the first question in this, and usually a very good sign for the game. And if we're talking about high 5s for both of us at the time, it would be a shock if we hadn't played this, especially given that this is a relatively short game. I think the answer to this, Sean, is not quite. We have played it since, we've enjoyed it since, but this would not come up as the favorite, the go-to, the we have to play this kind of two-player game. We've gone back more to, say, an Azul Summer Pavilion, which is not obviously a two-player only game, but you get the idea. That or a Hanamakoji or a Patchwork more readily than we've gone back to a Stellar. We love having it in the collection. Abby especially loves it because she whoops my butt at it every time we play. But no, it didn't quite rise to that 6. Again, I'd have a hard time telling you exactly why. Perhaps a slight amount of the fiddliness with the telescope and the setup, but really I don't think that's much of anything. It's an incredibly successful design. Would recommend trying it. Sean, you haven't tried this one yet, have you?
It's on my shelf of opportunity, so I guess I need to correct that. I think
you'd like it. I don't think this would be I don't think it would be lower than a 4.
Okay.
So I think you'd enjoy it. But yeah, give it a try. Worth getting off that shelf. So there you go. No guild thoughts on Stellar either. Which this could be interesting, Sean, especially with new releases over the past year. I'm curious how many of these will have just not gotten on people's radar.
Sure.
There's a lot of talk in the episode naming discussion, which we'll get to shortly, of I don't know, these are hard to mash up. I think partly due to lack of familiarity. So there you go.
Could be.
So yeah, I would say that one stays at a 5, and I would Abby. Last I asked her was still at a yeah with this one. So yeah, it's still really solid, really well recommended, but yeah, not moving anywhere.
Okay, and then in episode 226, titled Solo at Home, we reviewed Maquis, which is a solo game. It's a solo worker placement game where you play the French resistance in World War II in occupied France. I think that's kind of implied by French resistance. Well, maybe not. No, that's not true. Not necessarily. Anyway, so Alex, you gave this a 4, although it was a very enthusiastic 4. You said that in the double take, that enthusiastic 4 is unlikely to fall. You thought it was a really great design and enjoyed seeing what they did with this kind of limited design space for a solo worker placement game. You thought it executed the theme very well, but it wasn't a theme that you necessarily cared about. I gave this a 5. I said, I like this system quite a bit, and I would like a more in-depth version. And I was very sad that I had to send my copy back. The publisher is here in Albuquerque, and they, I think they sent you a game, or we sent you a game, and then he only had one copy left. And so I borrowed his copy for the review, and then had to return it in the middle of COVID, which was very scary. And yeah, so for me, I'm going to keep it at a 5. I would really like a copy of this, and I need to make that happen. 5 is a great game. We'll rarely turn down a play of it, and I would like to see other implementations of the system. I wouldn't mind seeing, a Maquis advanced, or I don't know. I thought it was great, and for me, I did like the system, or excuse me, I did like the theme. The theme did resonate more with me than it would with you for some clear reasons.
Yeah, fair enough. So I still have my copy, so it's not dropping any lower than a 4. I don't think I've played it since, or if I did, maybe just once. But it's something unique. I think, to its credit, it's something that not much else in the collection can do. And I think whenever you have a game that can occupy kind of a unique spot, I don't have a lot of solo games anyway. That's a feather in its cap. So I remain not as enthusiastic, maybe, but I certainly remain at a 4. It's not dropping any lower than that, and I'm glad I have a copy. It's a unique game, and yeah. So there you go. That's Maquis. We had to have one guild thought on it though.
Yeah, Nick McNabb says, I really enjoy it as an occasional solo game player. I like that it has a relatively quick setup / pack down, and I can play multiple times in a sitting. It's thinky, but not in an overwhelming way, which makes for a thoroughly enjoyable experience. And I think that sums it up perfectly. Yeah,
there you go. Well, that'll do it for the Dukes Quadruple-Take. Pretty speedy on this one, Sean. Basically, everything kind of stays where it is. It's a 5 and a 5 on Stellar, and a 4 and a 5 on Maquis. Before we wrap things up, the best of the rest of the names we did not pick, but thought about. Gave it some thought. First up on this one, BJ from Board Game Gumbo with Le Choix Stellar. I am butchering that, but basically French for the stellar choice, I think is what that was. For a lot of these this week, by the way, more than usual, We had to look it up. Yeah, so BJ's referencing King's Dilemma's alternative endings, Stellar, and the French Resistance. So good combo there, really clever. Just wasn't the pick.
Oh, no.
Aha, I left this one for you intentionally.
Oh, no, Alex. Well, I'm going to skip. The name father, Steve O'Rourke.
No, you can't do that.
Suggested.
No.
Suggested inner.
Come on, go back.
Inner, outer, and under. Inner is something, outer is something else. Under is, that's probably the French Resistance, like the French underground, right?
So
outer is outer space.
Yes.
And then inner is the inner choices that you make in a dilemma.
No, like being in the inner circle.
Inner circle, perfect. I love it. Good job, Steve.
Next up, Joshi and Gurr with Stellar à Trois, which was super clever, and I that was almost the pick. To be clear, Sean delegated naming responsibility entirely to me this week, which is an unusual situation, to say the least. I would say, Joshian, if you had somehow managed to incorporate or at least sell me on that King's Dilemma was in there, I would have picked it, because Stellar à Trois is fantastic. Kind of referencing Stellar, referencing Maquis, and also sounding like a beer. Love it. But yeah, didn't quite get the pick, but that was almost the name. Almost the name.
Alex Bistecki suggested, "Don't blame me, I voted for Kodos," which is an old Simpsons reference. Are you familiar with that reference, Alex?
No.
So there's the two aliens, Kodos and Kang, and there was an episode where it was a Treehouse of Horror, I believe, where Kodos, I think they both ran, and the choice was either Kodos or Kang, and I forget who says it at the end, but don't blame me, I voted for Kodos, which I don't know if I quite get the reference here to, or the application of it.
So I'll read how Alex described it. A classic Simpsons line tying together voting, an area being overtaken by a hostile group, and things from outer space.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, not bad. And then the one that Sean dodged, because he's a coward.
I am.
Andrea Merrihew with Espionnaire, trying the one-word title suggestion. And Andrea's explanation was, in some sense, spying can be a loose link between the games, the deceit and spying that usually occurs at court, French resistance fighters, and spying on the stars and the universe, using the French term, just added a better title. There you go.
Perfect. All right, Alex. Well, that's going to do it then for episode 251. Thanks to all of our guild members, but thanks for this episode's title to King Splendor, Between a Rock and a Hard Place. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on May 28th, 2021. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all places in the Duchy, go to DukesofDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsor, Game Toppers LLC. You can learn more about Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on.